Elian Archer never imagined his nights would be spent scrubbing coffee stains off boardroom tables while worrying about whether he'd have enough gas to get his daughter to school the next morning. It was past 11 when he pushed his mop bucket into the 39th floor of the Sterling and Wolf building, his eyes heavy from the double shift at the auto shop earlier that day. He didn't complain. He couldn't afford to. Not when his 6-year-old daughter, Callie, was fast asleep at Mrs. Domings's apartment 2 floors below his own, dreaming of birthday cakes and ballet shoes. Not when her mom had walked out 2 years ago and never looked back. He wiped his sleeve across his forehead, stepping carefully over the polished marble floor. The office lights were mostly off except for one at the far end. The corner suite. Again. He paused. That light had been on 3 nights this week already. He pushed his cart toward it, intending to clean around the desk quickly without disturbing whoever was burning the midnight oil. But when he turned the corner, he nearly dropped the trash bag in his hand. She sat in a sleek black dress, heels kicked off beneath the desk, a half-empty takeout box beside her laptop, and her long dark hair pulled into a messy bun. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, but her eyes flicked up when she heard him. "Oh, sorry," she said, sitting up straighter. "Didn't mean to get in your way." Her voice was warm, not the tight, clipped tone of most execs he'd met in passing. Elian blinked. "No, you're fine. I can come back later." "No, really. I could use the break." She leaned back in her chair, stretching her arms behind her. "You've been here all week, haven't you?" He hesitated. "Yeah, I usually take the night shifts." "Figured," she smiled, not the polite kind, an actual smile. "You always bring that same old thermos. What is it? Coffee?" "Sometimes," he chuckled. "Sometimes soup, depending on how broke I am." She laughed softly, then stood and stepped around the desk. "I'm Kaia Sterling." He nearly dropped the mop. "You're Sterling." Her brows lifted. "Yes, you thought I was the intern." He rubbed the back of his neck, feeling ridiculous. "I didn't think the CEO would be here at midnight, barefoot, eating lukewarm noodles." "Long week," she said, shrugging. "Quarterlies are hell." Elian stared at her, this woman, who ran one of the biggest tech firms in the city, talking to him like they were 2 people on equal ground. "I'm Elian," he said. "Elian Archer." "You have a nice name, Elian," she said, then nodded toward the hallway. "Need me to move?" "Nah, can work around you." He started cleaning the windows, but he was too aware of her behind him, watching. A few minutes passed in silence before she spoke again. "So, soup in a thermos, that means you cook?" "Yeah, my daughter's picky. Won't eat anything green, but she loves my chicken noodle." "You have a daughter." He smiled without thinking. "Callie, she's 6, smart as hell, loves dinosaurs and drawing on my apartment walls." Kaia laughed. "Sounds like a handful." "She is," he said, "but she's my world." He didn't know why he was telling her this. Maybe it was the way she looked at him, not with pity, not with that awkward sympathy people always gave single dads, but with curiosity. Interest. "What about you?" he asked. "Any kids?" She shook her head. "No, just a company that acts like one." He laughed. "You ever try soup in a thermos?" She tilted her head. "Are you offering?" "I mean, I make a killer tomato basil." Kaia looked at him for a long moment. "You know what? I'll take you up on that." He blinked. "You're serious?" "I haven't had a home-cooked meal in months, and if yours comes in a thermos, that's even better." He chuckled again, shaking his head. "All right, tomorrow night, but only if you promise not to judge my cooking." "No promises," she teased. That night, when Elian got home and checked on Callie, he found her curled up with her stuffed triceratops, her thumb in her mouth. He kissed her forehead gently, then leaned against the doorframe, thinking about Kaia Sterling. The CEO had asked for soup. The next night, he brought 2 thermoses, one with tomato basil, one with a few crackers on the side. Kaia was already there, sitting cross-legged on the floor in front of her desk, looking like she'd been through another war with her inbox. Her eyes lit up when she saw him. "You actually brought it." "You doubted me." "I didn't think you'd remember." He handed her the thermos and sat on the floor beside her, back to the wall. "So," she said after a sip, "this is really good." "I told you." They ate in silence for a bit, just the distant hum of the city outside the window. "I don't get this," she said suddenly. "You're funny, you cook, you're a good dad. Why are you cleaning floors at midnight?" He exhaled. "I used to work construction, got laid off when the company downsized. Then Callie's mom left. I needed something flexible, something steady. This pays just enough to keep the lights on." She looked at him, something soft in her eyes. He stood, feeling suddenly exposed. "I should get back to work." "Wait," she said, standing too. "You wanna grab dinner sometime, outside of thermoses and mop buckets." He stared at her. "You're asking me out." She shrugged. "I'm just saying, you seem like someone worth knowing better." He didn't know what to say. No woman had looked at him like that in years. "I'll think about it," he said, heart pounding. As he walked out of her office, he could feel her watching him. He didn't know what was happening. But for the first time in a long time, he was smiling. Kaia didn't sleep that night. She'd stayed on the office floor long after Elian left, her empty thermos beside her, laptop forgotten. Her mind kept circling around the same impossible thought. She just asked out a janitor. And not as a PR stunt, not as a rebellious whim, but because she genuinely wanted to. She hadn't meant to, it had just slipped out. But now that it had, she couldn't take it back. And the worst part, she didn't want to. The next morning brought a fresh flood of meetings and back-to-back investor calls, but her thoughts kept drifting. By noon, she was staring blankly at a quarterly report while her CFO explained burn rates. She'd never been this distracted, not over a man. Especially not one who worked nights. Especially not one who made tomato basil soup that still lingered faintly on her tongue. "You're somewhere else today," her assistant, Ava, said when Kaia closed her laptop mid-sentence during a strategy meeting. Kaia pushed a hand through her hair. "I didn't sleep well." "You eating again?" Ava asked carefully. "You didn't touch breakfast." Kaia nodded absently. "I had something last night." She didn't say what, or who made it. Later that evening, long after the building emptied again, she found herself back at her desk, though she had no intention of working. She was there for one reason. Elian arrived just after 10. This time, she met him by the window. He looked surprised to find her standing there, watching the skyline. "You waiting on someone?" he asked, setting down his supplies. "Yeah," she said. "You?" He blinked. "Everything okay?" "I've had a day full of people telling me what I should do, what I should say, how I should act. I don't want to be that person tonight." He studied her. "What kind of person do you want to be?" "The kind who asks if you'd come with her somewhere." His brow lifted. "Now." "Right now." He hesitated. "I'm on shift, and I don't Callie's with my neighbor, but told her I'd be back by midnight." Kaia nodded. "It won't take long, just a drive." He glanced at his cart, then back at her. "All right." They took the elevator down in silence. Kaia led him to a sleek black coupe parked in the executive garage. She tossed him the keys. "I can't drive that," he said. "You can, and you will." He stared at her, then slid behind the wheel. She gave him directions, but didn't say where they were headed. They drove for nearly 15 minutes, past city lights, and into a quieter part of town. Finally, she told him to turn into a narrow drive lined with trees. At the end stood a small, modern building made almost entirely of glass. "Where are we?" he asked. "My brother's gallery," she said, unbuckling. "He's in Paris for a few months. Have the key." She unlocked the door and flicked on the lights. The space came alive, soft amber glow illuminating paintings and sculptures from floor to ceiling. Elian stepped inside slowly. "I've never been in a place like this." "Thought you might like it," she said. "It's quiet, no phones, no one watching." He wandered past a sculpture made of twisted steel. "You come here a lot?" he asked. "When don't want to be Kaia Sterling." He turned to her. "Who are you when you're not her?" "Still figuring that out." He walked to a canvas on the far wall. A swirl of reds and golds, something chaotic and beautiful all at once. He looked back at her. "You brought me here to show me this." "No," she said. "I brought you here so could ask you something without it being weird." He waited. She stepped closer, her voice quiet. "When's the last time someone asked what you want?" He blinked. "I don't know, maybe before Callie was born." She nodded slowly. "So I'm asking now." He let the question hang there a moment. "I want her to have a better life than I did. I want to stop worrying every time rent's due. I want to give her things can't afford. And I want to feel like I'm more than just a guy with a mop." Kaia's heart clenched. "You are," she said softly. "You've always been more than that." He looked at her, something shifting in his expression. "Why me, Kaia?" "Because you don't pretend," she said. "You don't care that I'm the CEO. You talk to me like I'm just me." They stood there in the quiet, the hum of city noise far in the distance. Then, slowly, she reached for his hand. "I don't do things like this," he murmured. "I know," she said. "Neither do I." He hesitated, then laced his fingers with hers. Outside, the sky was beginning to cloud over, the first hints of a storm rolling in. But inside the gallery, under soft lights and surrounded by silent art, something unspoken passed between them, something fragile but real. Elian didn't know what would come of it. He still had a daughter asleep in a borrowed bed, bills waiting on the kitchen table, and shifts he couldn't afford to miss. But for the first time in years, he didn't feel invisible. And that changed everything. The rain came down in sheets 2 nights later, hammering against the city like it was trying to wash something away. Elian stood under the overhang outside the Sterling and Wolf building, his jacket soaked through and his socks squishing in his boots. He should have gone home. He'd finished his shift early. Callie was sleeping over at Mrs. Domings's again, and he had a stack of unpaid bills waiting on his kitchen counter. But he was still here, waiting. Kaia hadn't shown up the night before. No lights in her office, no message through Ava, nothing. He told himself it wasn't a big deal. She probably had meetings, or maybe she realized how absurd this whole thing was. A CEO spending time with a janitor. It never made sense outside of movies, and this wasn't one. Still, when the elevator dinged and the doors opened, he turned instinctively. Kaia stepped out, hair damp from the rain, a folder tucked under her arm. Her eyes widened when she saw him. "You're still here." "I wasn't sure if you were coming back." She looked down, then stepped closer. "I wasn't avoiding you," she said. "I got pulled into something complicated." He studied her face. "Is everything okay?" "My board found out I've been staying late. They think I'm distracted." He folded his arms. "Because of me." "They don't know about you, but they know something's changed. They always do. They notice the cracks before I do." He leaned against the wall, the wet fabric clinging to his back. "Do you regret it?" Kaia looked up sharply. "No, but I think I should have been more careful. This world doesn't tolerate deviation, especially not from people like me." "You mean women's?" "I mean women who built something from the ground up and are expected to bleed for it every day after. He hesitated. You think being with me is a deviation? She didn't answer right away. Then, it doesn't fit the image they want me to project. That's all. Elian exhaled, the words hitting harder than he expected. I'm not looking for a handout, Kaia. I never thought you were. Then why does it feel like you're always halfway out the door? Her eyes flashed. Because I'm not used to this. I don't know how to be someone's person when I've spent my whole life being someone's leader. The silence stretched. Finally, she held out the folder. I need to show you something. He took it hesitantly and opened it to find a portfolio of renderings, floor plans, and a proposal marked with red ink. His brow furrowed as he flipped through the pages. This is a community center, he said slowly. It's in Eastbrook, she replied, a few miles from where you live. His eyes narrowed. Why are you showing me this? Because the board wants to scrap it. They say it's not profitable, that it doesn't align with our core objectives. But I fought for it. I'm still fighting for it. He scanned the pages again. After-school programs, free childcare during work hours, job training sessions, every page was packed with resources he knew his neighborhood desperately needed. Why are you fighting for it? She didn't blink. Because I met a father who works 2 jobs, who has no safety net, and who still shows up with soup in a thermos. That kind of man deserves more than just survival. He stared at her, the weight of her words settling deep. I want you on the committee, she added. We need someone who knows what the community actually needs, not just more people in suits guessing. His jaw tightened. Clean floors, Kaia. I don't have a degree. I don't sit on committees. You don't need a degree to know what dignity looks like. You live it. He didn't respond. The rain outside grew louder. She stepped closer. I'm not trying to fix you, Elian. I'm trying to build something with you if you'll let me. His voice was quiet. You really think they'll let a janitor have a say in your boardroom? I don't care what they let me do. I care what I choose to do. He looked down at the folder again. I'll think about it. Kaia nodded, but something in her posture relaxed. They stood shoulder to shoulder, the storm just beyond the glass, everything outside a blur. I didn't mean to make you feel like an option, she said softly. He glanced at her. You didn't. I just needed to know if you were going to keep showing up. I'm here now. He didn't reach for her, didn't say anything else, but he didn't leave either. The next morning, Elian sat at the kitchen table with Callie, her curls still a mess from sleep, her spoon clinking in her cereal bowl. Daddy, she asked between bites. Yeah. Are you going to be famous? He blinked. What? Mrs. Doming said you were going to help build something important. He frowned. Did she now? Callie nodded. She said you were going to make sure kids like me had safe places to play. He looked at her stunned. Who told her that? Callie grinned. The lady with the fancy shoes. She came by last night and talked to Mrs. Domings. Elian leaned back, heart thumping. Kaia. He didn't know what she'd said or why she'd gone there, but he understood the message. She wasn't halfway out the door. She was already standing on the porch, waiting for him to open it. Elian stood in front of the mirror in the apartment's single bathroom, tugging at the sleeves of the only button-down shirt he owned that didn't have a stain on it. It was too tight across the shoulders now. He hadn't worn it since his last job interview 2 years ago, but Callie had insisted he wear it. You look like a real boss, she'd said with her gap-toothed grin, sitting cross-legged on the bed as Mrs. Domings braided her hair for school. He didn't feel like a boss. He felt like a guy about to step into a room full of people who didn't know his name and wouldn't care if they did. But he wasn't going for them. He was going because Kaia had asked him to speak at the final pitch review for the Eastbrook project, not as a token face, not as a symbol, as someone who had something to say. He arrived at the Sterling and Wolf headquarters just before 9, and Ava was already waiting in the lobby. She handed him a visitor pass and led him to the top floor, where the board was gathered in a gleaming conference room with walls of glass and a skyline that seemed to stretch forever. Kaia stood at the head of the table, hair pulled back, navy suit sharp and crisp. She didn't look over when he entered. She didn't have to. Her hand brushed the edge of the folder on the table, the same one she'd given him days ago. "As you all know," she said, voice clear and firm, "the Eastbrook Initiative has been under internal review for the past 6 months. Today, I've asked someone to speak who understands the difference between cost and value." She nodded to Elian. He cleared his throat and stepped forward. "I'm not a developer. I'm not an architect. I'm a father who's worked every kind of job there is to keep a roof over my daughter's head. I've walked through neighborhoods where kids play in broken parking lots because there's nowhere else safe to go. I've sat in laundromats helping Callie with homework because our place is too loud and too cramped." He glanced around the room. No one interrupted. "You talk about this project like it's a spreadsheet. I get it. You're worried about the return. But what if the return isn't profit? What if it's a kid who stays off the street? A mom who gets her GED because someone watched her toddler for 2 hours? What if it's a father who finally has a reason to believe he matters?" He paused, letting the silence stretch. "I can't give you numbers, but I can tell you this: if you build it, they'll come, and they'll keep coming. Because for people like me, a place like that isn't a luxury, it's a lifeline." He stepped back. Kaia didn't say anything, just looked at the board members one by one. By the end of the hour, the vote passed. 6 in favor, 3 against, 1 abstained. When the room emptied, Kaia leaned against the edge of the table, her gaze on the skyline. "You did that," she said. He shook his head slowly. "You opened the door, I just walked through it." She turned, stepping close. "I never told you why I stayed late that first night." "You were working." "I was hiding. My father built this company. I inherited it after he died. Everyone expected me to fail, and I started to believe them." He looked at her, more surprised by her honesty than anything else. "You don't seem like someone who doubts herself." "I do, all the time. But that night, I saw someone who didn't need a corner office to know who he was. You reminded me that leadership isn't about power. It's about purpose." He studied her face. "You sure you want to say all this to a guy who still drives a car with a busted passenger door?" She smiled. "Only if you promise not to let me forget it." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded sheet of paper Callie's latest drawing. It was a crayon sketch of a building with a garden on the roof and kids playing outside. At the bottom, in crooked letters, she'd written, "Our place." Kaia stared at it. "Is this the center?" "It's how she sees it," he said. "She's already picked the color of the walls in the art room." Kaia laughed softly, then looked up at him, something tender in her eyes. "I want you on the team, Elian, not just for Eastbrook. I want your voice in everything we do going forward. We're launching a new division focused on community development. Housing, education, outreach, real change, and I want you to lead it with me." He blinked. "You want me to work for Sterling and Wolf?" "I want you to work with me." He exhaled, heart thudding. "What about the board?" "They'll adjust." He stepped closer. "And what about us?" She didn't hesitate. "I've been all in since the thermos." He laughed, and for the first time in a long time, it wasn't a laugh that masked exhaustion or resignation. It was real. That night, Kaia drove them through Eastbrook in a black town car, the windows down as twilight settled over the city. They pulled into a quiet lot beside the old community library, the future site of the center. The building would be demolished in a week. Elian climbed out and helped Callie from the back seat. She ran to the fence, peering through the gaps at the cracked pavement and overgrown weeds. "This is it?" she asked. Kaia nodded. "It won't stay like this." Callie turned to Elian. "Can I paint the walls when it's done?" "You can paint the whole sky if you want," he replied. They stood there, the three of them, on the edge of something new. Later, Kaia took them both to a rooftop restaurant overlooking the river. There was no press, no gala, just candlelight, soft music, and the clink of glasses. Elian looked down at the dessert menu, then over at Kaia. "I never thought I'd be here," he said quietly. She reached across the table and took his hand. "You were never meant to stay invisible." He looked at her, then at Callie, who was busy arranging sugar packets into a castle at the edge of the table. "I'm not going anywhere," he said. Kaia squeezed his hand. "Neither am I." And just like that, the man who cleaned offices at night found himself building something permanent not just with bricks and glass, but with the kind of love that didn't need to be earned, only accepted. The world didn't change overnight. But his world did. And it was more than enough. The grand opening of the Eastbrook Community Center arrived on a morning painted in early summer light. The sky was cloudless, the air warm without being heavy. Rows of folding chairs lined the front lawn, filled with families, teachers, and volunteers. Children clutched balloons, and the scent of fresh paint and new beginnings lingered in the breeze. Elian stood near the entrance in a light blue dress shirt, sleeves rolled up, one hand resting on Callie's shoulder as she cradled a small bouquet of paper flowers she'd made for the ribbon cutting. Kaia was inside finalizing the press layout with her team, though she'd checked her watch at least 6 times in the last hour. Every time she did, Ava gave her a look that said, "He's not going anywhere." The crowd quieted as the mayor began her speech from the podium, but Elian's mind was elsewhere. A few months ago, he was mopping floors and counting pocket change for gas. Now, he stood in front of a building he had helped design, surrounded by people who shook his hand and addressed him with respect not because of his title, but because he'd earned their trust. Kaia emerged just as the mayor handed her the microphone. She wore a soft cream blazer over jeans, her hair down and loose in the wind. As she stepped to the podium, her eyes found Elian in the crowd, just briefly, but it was enough. Something in her expression shifted not nerves, but something more vulnerable. Like she wasn't just addressing a community, she was speaking to him. "When we began this project, the question everyone asked was, 'Why here?'" she said, her voice strong and even. But the better question was, why not? Why not invest in places where resilience lives in every household? Why not listen to people who already carry the weight of their communities without recognition? Why not remember that innovation isn't just about tech or finance, it's about people? She paused. "This building exists because someone who never sat on a boardroom panel asked the hardest questions. And he reminded me that leadership doesn't come from titles, it comes from truth." She stepped down from the podium without saying his name. She didn't need to. The crowd applauded as she took the ceremonial scissors and turned toward Elian and Callie. Callie skipped up beside her, eyes wide as Kaia lowered the scissors to her level. "Want to do the honors?" Kaia asked. Callie nodded, gripping one handle with both hands while Kaia held the other. They cut the ribbon together in front of the cheering crowd. Confetti flew into the air, and Elian felt something shift in his chest, a weight he hadn't realized he'd carried lifting clean off. Inside, the community center buzzed with laughter, movement, and music. The art room already had drawings tacked to the walls, and the reading corner was filled with beanbags and donated books. A local jazz trio played in the courtyard, and volunteers handed out lemonade and sandwiches. In a quieter hallway, just past the childcare wing, Kaia found Elian leaning against the doorframe of the multipurpose room. He was watching a group of teenagers test out the new recording equipment they'd installed the week before. "They're already making playlists," he said. "I heard one of them say this feels like their second home." Kaia joined him, sliding her hand into his. "That's the best return we could ask for." He glanced down at her. "You were brave to fight for this." "I wasn't brave, just finally knew what mattered." He turned toward her fully. "You didn't just change this place, you changed me." "No," she said, brushing a hand lightly over his chest. "You were always this, you just needed someone to remind you." He kissed her, there in the hallway with kids laughing down the corridor and sunlight pouring through the skylights. It wasn't rushed or uncertain, it was the kind of kiss that locked something permanent into place. That night, after the crowd had dispersed, and Callie had fallen asleep in the backseat of their borrowed car, Elian reached into his pocket as Kaia drove them back toward the city. "I found this when I was packing up my old apartment," he said, holding out a crumpled piece of paper. She took it and unfolded it slowly. It was a sketch Callie had made months ago, stick figures beneath a rooftop labeled "New House." "She drew it before I even told her we might move," he said, like she already knew this was coming. Kaia looked at him. "Are you ready?" "I'm more than ready." Weeks later, they moved into a townhouse in a quiet corner of Eastbrook, not far from the center. It had 2 floors, a tiny backyard with a struggling lemon tree, and a small studio at the back Kaia insisted Elian convert into his own office. He split his time now between the Community Development Division at Sterling and Wolf and the center itself, where he ran workshops, mentored teens, and finally felt like every hour of his day meant something. Callie settled in quickly. Her drawings now decorated the fridge and Kaia's office. She asked if she could call Kaia Kay instead of her full name, and Kaia answered by teaching her how to make pancakes on Sunday mornings, even when they came out burnt. One Saturday, Elian stood barefoot in the kitchen, flipping through a stack of mail, when he found an envelope with Kaia's name on it. It was addressed in his handwriting. "Did you write yourself a letter?" she asked, stepping out of the bedroom in one of his old T-shirts. He handed it to her. "Open it." Inside was a folded note, simple, handwritten, no logo or stamp. It read, "I was never meant to stay invisible. Thank you for seeing me. Will you marry me?" She looked up, stunned. "You don't need fireworks," he said. "No rooftop dinner or rented orchestra." Kaia stepped closer, her eyes bright. "I only need you." "I wanted it to be simple," Elian said, "because the truth is, I've been certain about you since soup in a thermos." She pulled him in without answering, kissing him like it was the easiest answer in the world. They married in the courtyard of the community center that summer. No designer gowns, no media, just folding chairs, fairy lights, and the people who had been there from the start. Callie walked Kaia down the aisle, proudly announcing them as "my parents" before the first toast was ever raised. When the sun set that evening and the music faded, Elian and Kaia danced barefoot on the grass, her head resting against his chest, his hand splayed across her back. "You're not a janitor anymore," she whispered. He kissed her temple. "No, I'm yours." And in a neighborhood where nothing ever stayed the same for long, their love became something rare, something that didn't just survive, but built a home in the middle of all the chaos. A love that created something lasting. A family that finally had everything it never thought it could.